Welcome to the 10th and final day of our Symposium 360, Agro-Processing in Sub-Saharan Africa. Hopefully over these 10 days, you have learned as much as I have and generated new ideas and potential collaborators. It is a pleasure to be here with you. My name is Jeanette Andrade, and I am an assistant professor and the Master's in Dietetic Internship Director at the University of Florida. I will be moderating 3 talks today from well-accomplished scientists. The session theme today is on linking markets and populations, which selfishly I'm very interested in, as my research is dealing more with applied and focusing on populations and their health and longevity. Let me remind you that we will have a panel discussion at the end of the talks. I will encourage you to submit your questions to the chat box. For the panel, please let us know the name of the speaker the question is directed to. Now on to our first presenter. Professor Ruth, as she prefers to be called, is a scholar, researcher, food and nutrition scientist, African Food Prize laureate, and holder of Kenya's Silver Star and Distinguished Service Medals. She also serves on several international and national bodies associated with food systems research and programs, which is quite an accomplishment. She works with Western Kenya with the Rural Outreach Africa, which she founded, to harness the intellectual resources of universities in Kenya and connecting them to communities to improve the livelihoods of the rural poor. Ruth seeks to improve policy and decision-making dissemination of significant scientific findings and emerging technologies in the field as an editor of the African Journal of Food, Agricultural Nutrition and Development. The journal shares knowledge and research findings. She is a staunch supporter of women in science and takes time to mentor young scholars in her field, both male and female. Of late, she has been very much involved with COVID issues, especially as it relates to human nutrition, health, and sanitation, which I know is a very important topic at this time. All her professional life, she has focused on fighting hunger, malnutrition, and poverty. She ensured right to adequate food, was included in the Kenya Constitution in 2010, and is now addressing its implementation. Currently, she supports job creation in the Agro Center. I cannot be more enthused to hear Ruth's talk today. So Ruth, take it away.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Amy. Thank you, Jeanette, for that introduction. And let me just thank the organizers for inviting me to this conference. I've had the opportunity to log in and listen to some of the sessions, and just very excited that the focus has been soya in Africa. It's just about time. Because from the time I studied in the US, human nutrition and then food science, and I got to learn about soya and its benefits. And it took me such a long time. It's like as if I'm getting it accepted in Kenya during my retirement. And it was just so difficult to convince people that soya as a legume is so much more nutritious than many other legumes we use in our diets here. But finally we are there. So I'm happy to just be able to tell our story, and it's a short story of soya in the areas where I work with the farmers, but it's a very exciting story. I know you've had a long 10 days of listening and looking at videos and looking at PowerPoints. And so deliberately, I decided not to even use my PowerPoints, but at least to speak and to just express to you my passion about collaboration on soya, and especially with the US, where I did my undergraduate and master's studies, and just making sure that what you have done in the US and what we do in Africa, we can collaborate, because you already have a lot of information, you have a lot of science, and you have connected with the private sector, and you have reached heights which we haven't reached. And in Africa, we are still dealing with how to produce good soya, to have good yields, and also to try and market this to our farmers, see how they can get this into their diets, and at the same time, see how they can make money out of it. And then with my interest in young people and especially, and also women, how they can create enterprises out of soya, and actually that it can actually be a multifaceted product that they can deal with. So I just thought I should share with you that how the soya actually then got accepted in Western Kenya was very, very unique. We had a project funded by Agro, the Agriculture Green Revolution for Africa, Alliance for Green Revolution for Africa. And it was focused on soya, soil health. And we had to use legumes, and soybeans were one of the crops we planted. And just by farmers seeing what one season of soybean planting did for their soils, and they were now able to produce more grain, they said, oh, then it must be good even for us to eat. If this crop, if this legume is good for our soils, then once we harvest it, what do we do with it? And then from there on, we jumped in and we started teaching them how to prepare and how to make sure that we remove some of the, offensive odors, they are not used to. They complain it takes too long to cook, how you can soak ahead of time so that you can save on fuel, how you can diversify your diet by adding to different foods. And then the whole idea was to just make sure that they can actually accept it. We did this in schools, and we did this in churches. We did this with the women's groups. We also demonstrated to them how to prepare snacks, which they could then market and sell. And young men especially came into this and wanted to be taught how to use the machinery of soy processing, very basic and very rudimentary at the village level. But and every event we had, we prepared products which could actually be shared, people testing, and then they would start asking for them. And I can tell you right now that in Western Kenya, where we are as an organization, Rural Outreach Africa, that they are now associating us with having promoted the soya. And thank God, when we just wondered where are we going to get funding from, to be able to promote this in school feeding, Annette, a very good friend now, Annette Donnelly and Joanne Andrade came from University of Illinois, and they came just before our lockdown here in Nairobi with the corona, and said, Ruth, we can work together. We were supposed to go to Western Kenya together, but we couldn't because everything was now shut down. But we were able to continue now, though slowly, working on a proposal and working on collaboration and getting systems in place so we could work together. And now we have this collaboration now. And thank God that fortunately, we should be able to get this funding, which already has been approved by our Ministry of Education and our Ministry of Science and Technology, so that we can begin to have farmers plant the soybeans. And then it's mostly farmers, and many of them are parents. And then we actually bring this to the schools. And we also try to link with the processors so that it can go to markets, but also we can produce other products and be able to get this into school feeding. Now, just before this came about with this funding, much earlier on, as an organization, Rural Outreach, we had funding which helped us to enrich school meals for primary school children. Unfortunately, that project was cut short because immediately Kenya went into post-election violence and the funding stopped. But what we had started to do at that time was to bring soya to households and teach them how to prepare and add that to the porridge or other foods that the children were eating. And we although we didn't collect much data at that time, we had anecdotal information where parents were telling us, and we could also see that, look, just in 6 months of feeding our children with soya, they're already looking better. They are more alert. And as we do that, when we do feeding, we also bring in the issue of hygiene. We bring in the issue of sanitation. We bring in the issue of how children should look good, going to school and also staying at home. And you could now see parents, beginning to appreciate how healthy their children looked. So now with this project we have with the University of Illinois, we've been able to build onto that. So we are more or less in the same area, but we are expanding it and also working with the ministry. They are letting us know which areas and which schools we can go to, but we virtually bring everybody on board. We bring the farmers in, we bring in the ministry, we bring in community leaders, we bring in the youth, we bring in the agricultural research. We work with the CARO, that's the agricultural research institution, is now expanded in Kenya. We have always worked with them because I am essentially an academic, a researcher, a scientist, but it's a question of how do you take this information you have? And I know a lot of this has been shared here. Soya has gone to different levels from what I was hearing, that you actually now are able to bring this to where it is needed. How do you bring it to the consumers? And how do you bring it to traders? And how do you make sure that it's actually accepted? And in the course of time, actually, we've been approached by people who come to me and tell me, Ruth, Professor, why are you promoting this soya? I read online that actually it's not a good product. I saw all these write-up about soya and what it does and how it has some elements that are not good for human health and how it makes people sterile and so on and so forth. And I tell them, soya has been around for a long, long time, for millennia, starting from China, and they eat that almost daily. And I have a feeling if we eat it, it will sort out some of the health issues we are actually having. So the best approach then for us has been to enter the community through the women. But then we discovered that, women come to you, they are in a meeting, but then they have to go back home and convince their men about the benefits, especially health benefits of whatever it is we are trying to market or to sell or to promote. And so we make sure that we approach families, and our events normally have men included. And we find that opinion leaders are strongly male in the community. So we make sure we involve them as well. So we just involve everyone. And so I can tell you right now that soya, finally in Western Kenya, and Western Kenya, I'm talking over a wider population of about 6 million Kenyans, is like one sixth of Kenya is really producing soya now. And now during this corona, when we cannot import animal feeds, we are now having to make animal feeds locally. They are all looking for soybean. A lot of it was coming from Uganda. There's a lot grown in Uganda for oil production. But now, Western Kenya has had to wake up because at one time the borders are closed. You can't move produce back and forth. It's on and off, on and off. But we are telling our farmers that this is where the money is. You can grow. It is a bimodal rainfall in Western Kenya. You can grow soybeans twice a year and you can harvest and make money much better than you can any other crop. Secondly, you can actually mix it in your food, and we have to teach them how to do this, as I mentioned earlier, and we also have to talk about it in the media. So we bring the media along with us as well. So in other words, there's now a market for soybean. You cannot promote soybean if you cannot, or any other product for that matter, if you don't have a pathway of linking it to markets or linking it to consumption. So that actually requires different expertise as well. So as an organization, we've done this whether with money or not. And so during this Corona, what we were able to do at one time, it was just close down everything, stay in the house. And for many of you, you may not be familiar with an African household where there may be a mother and a father and maybe 6 children, and you are telling them stay inside. What are they going to eat? And what other issues are going to arise when people are locked up in the house? It just wasn't going to work. And that's when I said, look here, I'm no longer in retirement. Let me see how I can actually even advise my government. And people themselves started saying, look, hunger will kill us before Corona. So I set out to even try to get some donations to help those who are extremely vulnerable. And they have been, and they are continued to be. But a good friend actually who gave me a good amount of money, I told him, look, I'm going to help take care of the immediate needs and the immediate hunger. But what I'll also do, because the Corona emerged during planting time in Western Kenya, in March, they were supposed to be in the fields planting. People are now sitting down. So we're going to have hunger. I then told them, no, I'm going to actually get soy seed. I'm going to help farmers to prepare their fields. And, soy growing is good. It will be good for the soils. It will be steady. It will not be washed away by the rains with this weather variability. And actually, we were able to get good seed. And we gave that to our selected number of farmers. So the agreement was that we give you maybe 1 pound, 1 kilo, and you give us twice that back so that we can use it in some other ways. And so as we speak right now, for some reason, the crop did so well. The crop just has done so well. So we're just beginning to harvest. And many farmers, in fact, we didn't have enough seed. Many more were asking, can we have this? Can we have that? And we were telling them, look, we may not even have the full fertilizer, but just use your own manure, which you normally use to plant your grains. And that's what we did. And so all of a sudden, we have good fields of soya growing in Western Kenya. I can't travel. I feel terrible. I can't travel to Western Kenya. I'm in that bad age group right now, but I'm monitoring everything like on a daily basis. And so their message here is that it is possible with persistence and with partnerships and with some resources to actually get farmers to accept to do something that is good for them. But for many of them, seeing is believing. And then we have the science as well. We are scientists. We have proof of concept, but we have to move it from where we have it, from the shelves, from our publications, from our labs, and take it where it needs to be with the farmers, with the consumers, with the traders. A challenge I found is how to dry the grain when the rains are here and they are not supposed to be here. Because ordinarily we just dry in the sun. The other thing is, so we also get materials, canvas, so that the grain can stay clean, and then storing it, so that it does not go bad. We use the picks, the grain storage bags that are Purdue We use them to make sure that the grain stays good. So we actually follow the value chain from production to harvesting, to storing, to processing, to actually preparation, to markets. And then the challenge is, how do we then process? How do we add value? How do we get the processors in? And I can tell you that many of the processors will be young people, because they like machinery. And I'm hoping this way we collaborate. And I've seen some of these. It can be very simple. It can be fabricated, locally, and some of it can actually just be adapted so that the farmers have many options. And you have your good grain, but you can also sell it and actually get money out of it. But at the same time, you can keep it and eat it year round, adding to different foods. But at the same time, we have to teach them how to do that. So it's very straightforward, but it requires collaboration, it requires persistence, and it requires that all of us be passionate about it. But I see soya and soya protein. I see soya, adding that, supplementing what we do, adding to the kinds of food, sometimes very bland, sometimes not much protein, many meats. Yeah, people like meat, but it's expensive. And now when it is processed, and it's bland, and I had on the session, one of the scientists, sorry, I forgot his name, who was asked a question about the denaturation of the protein. And he said, no, denaturing the protein does not mean it is destroyed. There is denaturation, and then there is actually destruction. So it's possible to process this soy protein in a way that it remains, viable for human health, and that we can actually use it. But I see great opportunity now, and I hope we can continue with this collaboration. I'll leave it there, and I just want to say thank you so much, and let's keep it up, and let's continue with this. Thank you.
Well, Ruth, thank you so much for that wonderful presentation. I know as a community researcher myself, I was nodding my head throughout the entire discussion that you had, because I know as a community researcher, that's what we want. We want stakeholders, we want the longevity of programs. And honestly, it just came through a soybean to just plant that seed into someone's mind to see the benefits of it, and how as a community you can all work together in really kind of elevating the nutritional value of that. So my question to you, as you kind of alluded to with COVID and how you persevered, and I think that's what we're learning throughout all this pandemic situation, is you have to be very innovative with how you're addressing some real life issues. So throughout COVID, beyond the fact that you were able to, take that soy seed and plant it and everything, what other observations have you noticed through the community with how they're thinking about soy, how they're utilizing it, just with COVID or just overall? Like, what are the other innovative things that you've seen within the community that you've been just very impressed about?
Thank you, Jeanette. I think what I've been impressed about is the number of farmers who are ready to receive the seed and plant. And the fact that we didn't even have enough of it, as opposed to much earlier when they were not so interested in soybean and they were more interested in, say, bush beans or other kinds of legumes. Yeah. And then what we've seen also is people's interest in nutrition generally, because very, very quickly, the disease was linked to the immune system. And they keep reminding us that if you are not strong, If your immunity is not strong, you are likely to catch it and you are likely to die. So people are tending also to go back to their traditional foods. They are going back to their traditional foods, but then now they're saying, oh, nutrition. Yeah. So this soy is very nutritious. So they'll be more keen to use it for home consumption rather than sell it away. And the other thing is seeing them actually want to use it in animal feeds. So they are keeping now small animals, something they will do casually, but they are now, looking at home and saying, with very little resources, with the small land even, they are busy building chicken houses. We can actually do this. And we can also now eat eggs, or we can feed our children eggs, something they will not do. So I think the innovation is just what can we do in the agricultural space? Because now that's where their money is. All of a sudden, agriculture has become very important.
Yeah, I appreciate that you actually mentioned that, because if we do look at the reports that have been published from various countries, we see that people's dietary habits have kind of gone back to more of the nutritious foods, fruits, vegetables, whereas the thought is, oh, they're going to eat, comfort food, whatever comfort food means in that, country. So I think you made an absolutely excellent point with that, because you're right. People are suddenly waking up to, oh, wait, nutrition is actually something that we need to be concerned about. We need to care about. So I do appreciate your thoughts on that. So at this time, I know that we're going to transition to the next speaker. So Ruth, hopefully, through the panel discussion, we're able to get more into some of the information that you presented to us. So move on to the second presenter. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, we're delighted to be participating in this very valuable forum. As someone who grew up in the Midwest, where soybeans are a rather important commodity, it's exciting to be involved in the development of that sector of agriculture in Tanzania. So our story began in the early 2000s, seeing that there were no animal feed mills in Morogoro, Tanzania. Dr. Faustin Lekula, a renowned professor and head of the Animal Science Nutrition Department at the Sokoine Agricultural University, which was the largest agricultural university in the country, started developing rations and mixing feed for his friends and neighbors. At the time, all livestock producers were depending on feed produced in Dar es Salaam, which was 4 hours away. So the supply was erratic, and it sometimes resulted in disruption of their production, especially for the poultry keepers. Whenever there were quality issues with the feed, the poultry keepers and the producers of the feed did not have a chance to meet to resolve their problems. So it was on this basis that the idea of establishing a local feed mill, which could utilize crops produced locally in Morogoro and supply the animal feed industry within the region, arose. So Professor Lekula started his feed mill, established in downtown Morogoro in a small facility, with the customer in mind, right from the start, catering for the individual requirements of the livestock producers and providing knowledge to the livestock keepers as to how to care for their animals, and promoting the livestock industry as a whole within Morogoro. So this business grew from a simple feed mixing service for the farmers into a full production line of commercial compounded feeds, and especially emphasizing poultry feed. And the company was known as International Tan Feeds Limited. It was formed formally in 2008 by Dr. Lakula and his family. The major evolution involved shortly thereafter with the purchase of land on the outskirts of Morogoro and constructing a fully modern feed mill and grain storage facility. The complete or finished feed production was moved to the new plant, while the feed mixing service remained in the old, smaller plant, where it still functions today. The new feed mill consisted of 4 grinder mixers for mash and all of the necessary equipment for efficiently producing feed. With the increased production capacity, the business grew quickly, and soon sales expanded outside of Morogoro. Eventually, there was enough demand in Dar es Salaam that a warehouse and distribution center was established there to meet this new demand. But 80% of the country's poultry producers are located in or near Dar es Salaam, and that expansion made a lot of sense. Then in 2015, 7 years later, a second evolution happened with canned feeds, and they formed a joint venture with my company, More Ag Limited. I and several partners decided to invest in International Canned Feeds and interject capital, enabling an expansion in its livestock feed business and strong investments in additional retail stores. The investment enabled a more efficient sales process and added increased customer care with both the technical and the practical advice to our clients. A new corporate image was created and a marketing campaign was launched. The company grew its livestock feed business while investing also in the smallholder commodity input supply chain to increase the quality and reduce the spoilage of our raw products. In addition to the retail stores, investments were made to expand the feed milling capacity with the addition of a feed pelleting line. We had a state-of-the-art extrusion equipment and technologies were brought in from the United States, but we were the first to introduce floating pellets for the fish producers. So the company that began as a small mixing operation to help neighboring farmers was then transformed into a professionally managed corporation led by Professor Lakula. At its core, however, our guiding principles remained the same. Canned Feeds is guided by the vision, mission, values, and environmental social governance policies. Our guiding principles, which focus on sustainability, is the ultimate goal. For us, this means that we serve the people, the environment, and the company. And our success depends on our commitment to the long-term prosperity of these stakeholders. Although we like to think that we're kind-hearted folks, the philosophy is a strategic business decision that we believe is what will enable us to remain successful into the future. We were attracted to canned feeds as investors for several primary benefits. We were attracted to the idea that their focus was on female empowerment. 80% of our 65% of our clients were female poultry keepers. We liked the environmental benefits of switching to soy production for our protein instead of using fish. We liked the food security issue, which is why we chose that instead of something like gold mining or something else that had nothing to do with feed. And we liked the fact that it was profitable. For us, being profitable is an absolute requirement for long-term sustainability for our smallholder providers, for our poultry keepers, and for our feed mill company. So the number of our poultry farm keepers has increased and is projected to grow by a compounded annual growth rate of 22% from 2015 through to 2022. Our growth rate is not a chicken and egg question. While we consistently try to expand our share of the market to serve existing small and large producers, Canned Feeds extension services also include financial literacy, small business advice, feed advice, input support, and the basic support a nascent business person would need to start her business successfully and sustain it. This is not a chicken and egg question for us. 65% of our business customers are women, and we see that number rising. The market trends, however, are changing. Canned Feeds is committed to smallholder producers, and Professor Lakula has formed the Smallholder Farmers Association. This is partly because large international players are now entering the animal keeping market in Tanzania. Tyson Foods has set up a very large poultry operation there. So this will represent significant competition for our smallholder farmers. So we hope that Lakula's forming a Smallholder Farmers Association will help overcome and meet that competition. But we are committed to serving the small and the large producers and ride through whatever business cycles happen. We're also working with sourcing and aggregation in another evolution of our business. As with poultry farmers, we're committed to the sustainability of the farmer's success and are implementing systems to help farmers obtain the inputs and receive the extension support to increase their crop yields, lower their post-harvest loss, and mitigate the risk to the extent we possibly can. These services are shifting to our sister entity, Canned Grains, whose management will focus wholly on grain management and procurement. So in 2018, we replaced 100% of our fish meal usage with soybeans. We're also increasing our yields for our local soybean farmers, 40% of whom are women. When we came to explore this market in 2013, we met with a rather large humanitarian agency that had a very large soybean introduction program in Tanzania. To our surprise, they lamented that they did not plan for processing and outtake for the soybean growers. And as a result, these small farmers had produced soybeans and had no market. We ended up purchasing half of all the soybeans produced in Tanzania in our first year of business there. But that has changed now. So the bottom line is that our relationship with our customers, our suppliers, and our employees is to improve their livelihoods and our success. Our success depends on their success and all of us sustaining the environment. Canned Feeds sensitizes smallholder farmers and livestock producers on climate smart agriculture, CSA. We introduce production techniques that will help with that to reduce carbon emissions and increase yields with lower inputs. Smallholder farmers, 40% of them are women, are about 80% of this MEDA group of 1,200 farmers. And MEDA is a humanitarian agency known as Mennonite Economic Development Associates. But these 1,200 women have gone out and purchased huge acres and started up their farm operation on new acreage and are very dramatically impacting the village where they grow where they live with their additional growth of this commodity. Best practice cash controls have been applied, including our in-store electronic point of sale systems, which provide real-time sales information to our online ERP management and accounting system. These systems are aligned with matching electronic bank transfers and cash deposits. So efficiencies in managing cash and inventory help us with the liquidity to meet and anticipate customers' demand as well as provide for our employees. The current evolution is in response to market forces and the encroachment of larger scale producers entering the market, as I alluded to earlier. We've remained true to our commitment to the smallholder farmers, and we continue to strengthen and source from local production. However, we also are meeting increased demand for our feed and are shaping services and products for both large and small producers, adding cattle and pig farms to our feeds to our traditional mixes. We're also shifting to soya production and purchase locally, nationally, and internationally to meet the increased demand that our company is experiencing. So, does corporate social responsibility matter? To solidify the feed value chain, Canned Feeds has expanded its base of smallholder crop farmers and livestock producers, and we have provided focused technical support and extension services. In doing so, the company has successfully provided efficient and affordable feed for small-scale producers for poultry and livestock, while building a sustainable market for the smallholder crop farm. Through this, Tan Feeds has become a leading force in promoting soybeans and in replacing fish meal as a protein source in animal feeds in Tanzania, thus providing a positive environmental impact in the overfishing of Lake Victoria. And I will add that now almost all of our competing feed mill operations have also switched to the use of some soya in their feeds. While doing this by 2022, we forecast that Tan Feeds will have provided technical support to 10,000 smallholder farmers and livestock producers. We're affecting the larger producer market by linking locally produced grain to the supply chain of those large-scale producers, a chain that will continue to strengthen. We're committed to a gender strategy framework that empowers women on our team and sensitively serves our customers, both growers and livestock producers, through the products in appropriately sized packaging and extension services tailored to their needs. For us, the CFR is a strategy that enables us to evolve and pivot with the sea changes that are happening in the market, while enabling us to remain true to our commitment to sustainability, which has been the key to our success. The international community has taken note. MEDA, Mennonite Economic Development Associates, awarded us their Global Affairs Award, and we've also been honored by an award by the African Development Bank. So, at the end of the day, our success is written by the success of our customers, our growers, and our team of employees. We will all prosper together, or it simply doesn't work very long. We feel the same way about the environment that we all share. It also must prosper, or all of us will suffer. For Tan Feeds, corporate social responsibility isn't just a nice thing that we do in our community. It's a business strategy that enables our community of stakeholders to thrive and keep us in business for the long haul. That's what we're looking for. So we'll welcome your questions. If you would like to get
Thank you, Wilmer, for this very exciting talk. And I appreciate that you focused a lot on corporate responsibility because sadly, sometimes in organizations, that's like at the bottom of it. So I appreciate that that was your focus of this entire presentation. I did have a question because you, of course, have a lot of women, and that was part of this organization was really focusing on gender empowerment, which certainly as a female, I do appreciate. Just out of curiosity, the women, are they teaching other women or their children on how to plant, on how to grow, on how to, so do you see that occurring as well? Like they have that empowerment to kind of continue with that educational strategy?
Yes, we do. The practices of the villagers are generally known within the village. And so I think that's why the one cooperative that now has 1,200 members grew to 1,200 because they were very successful in their agricultural commodity production and people wanted to join and be part of that. So we absolutely see that continuing, beyond the current generation that are in it.
Mm. And then one other question too, a couple of audience members had this question and it has been in my mind too. I see the growth strategy up until 2022. Has COVID at all impacted that projection by any means, or do you see that still it'll be high, if not higher, because of COVID?
Well, it certainly affected Tanzania, affected the entire economy, and it affected our business. The most specific way was, of course, they went through their lockdown period earlier this year, and so large gatherings were curtailed or eliminated altogether. But poultry is kind of the premium food that is offered, at least by the middle class, for family reunions, weddings, special events. And so that lockdown caused the poultry producers not to have a market for their poultry for a while. And what happened was, as the poultry matured, they have about a 36 to 40 day cycle from the baby chicks to the marketable broiler, and they just didn't repurchase chicks when they got through those broilers. And so that, of course, reduced our demand for chick feed and then broiler feed. But that, eventually ended in July or August. Tanzania, fortunately, through some mystery that I think is still being explored, has not had a severe effect by the pandemic. The expectation of large numbers of hospitalized residents just didn't happen. And so we're hopeful that that will allow the country to get back on its feet. But overall, it was a huge economic blow, and the economy is still struggling to overcome that.
Well, thank you very much for that. I know that your contact information is up, and certainly during the panel discussion, we'll be able to answer, you can answer additional questions from the audience as well. So I thank you so much for your time, and we'll move on to the third presenter. Thank you so much. Hello, and now on to our third presenter, Dr. Wilna Oldewage-Theron. I'm delighted to present her because as a fellow dietitian, it is wonderful to have another dietitian present at this symposium. She is a professor of nutrition in the College of Human Sciences at Texas Tech University. She has 20 years of community nutrition research experience in Africa and is a National Research Foundation rated researcher in South Africa. Her research interests include the factors contributing to household food insecurity, malnutrition, and resource poor communities, where she has investigated the effect of various interventions. And just to highlight a few of those: food fortification, supplementation, nutrition education, which is near and dear to my heart, as well as school feeding programs on food insecurity, dietary diversity, and nutritional status of women, children, and seniors. Her community research and development program at present is mainly focused on the double burden of disease among women, children, and seniors. From 2016 to 2018, she was a consultant for WISH, facilitating a USDA Cochrane workshop on school feeding programs for delegates from various African and South American countries. She has also been involved in impact studies for the Council for Scientific and Industrial Research, Joint Aid Management, the United States Potato Board, and the World Initiative for Soy and Human Health. And without further ado, Wilna, it's your show now.
Thank you very much, Janet, for that kind introduction. And I also want to say good morning to everybody. It's morning here, maybe afternoon where some of our listeners are, or our participants. And I just want to say once again, thank you very much for inviting me to talk at this seminar. It's really a big honor for me, and I'm really looking forward to this. I am a huge advocate of soy, and as I was listening to Dr. Ruth, or Prof. Ruth speaking, what she's done in Kenya, I have also done in South Africa, where I have worked a lot with soy, teaching women how to grow soy, and I have now basically moved on from the teaching of the women more to the agro processors, where I am now teaching people in South Africa on how to oh my goodness, to develop products, food products that are healthy for the community. And for that reason, I have focused my talk today more on South Africa. And I want to talk from a nutritionist perspective, and I cannot do that without really giving a little bit of background about South Africa, because that is where I work. I'm also still associated with the University of the Free State in South Africa. So bear with me when I take you through the nutritional status of people in South Africa, because I think it is important to put food product development into perspective and what the role and the responsibility of food processors are for when they do develop food products. So I'm going to talk a little bit about South Africa, talk about the consequences of malnutrition in South Africa, the food consumption and market information that is available, strategies to address malnutrition, and then I'm going to work you through a model for food product development that I am employing in my soy-based snack food development, and then just conclude. So I think I do not have to tell anybody where South Africa is. South Africa is at the southernmost point of Africa, and we have the second largest economy in the world. And like all African countries, South Africa is a beautiful country, lots of resources, beautiful animal life, nature, and very well developed in the cities. But unfortunately, when we look at the newspapers, we see that there is a lot of unemployment, hunger, poverty, disease in the country. And even now with COVID, this situation has deteriorated. More people are now food insecure, and more people are becoming malnourished. So we know that, and this is just a very simplified cycle of poverty and hunger. We know that poverty really is an underlying factor of household food insecurity, which then also results in malnutrition because of poor dietary intakes. And if people are malnourished, if we talk about children, for instance, children do not develop optimally when they are malnourished, and they are then having problems in school. And also adults, when they are malnourished, they cannot operate properly, and they cannot be as productive as they can, sometimes also losing their jobs due to lots of absenteeism because they are malnourished. And that is just getting back into this circle, and very difficult to get out of this. Now, if we look at the South African situation, 56% of the people in South Africa live in poverty, 28% in extreme poverty, which basically means that those people do not have enough money to really buy a nutritious meal and to really meet their nutritional needs. If we look at the household food insecurity, 26% of the people are food insecure, 28% are at risk of hunger. Now, if we look at poverty, 56%, food insecurity at about 54%, we can see that there is a definite relationship between people living in poverty and then those that are food insecure, because poverty is really one of those factors that affect food insecurity. And like I said, if people are food insecure, they often rely in buying cheaper products that are more energy dense, and they do not eat a healthy diet, fruit, vegetables. And if we think about all the food products in South Africa, those that are the healthier products, those are also the more expensive products that people cannot always afford, which then leads to malnutrition. talking about malnutrition, if we just look at both genders together combined, we will see that almost 20%, a fifth of the children in South Africa are still stunted. And what we mean by stunted is that this is a chronic malnutrition, a chronic situation where children do not have enough to eat. And that is really, once a child reaches the age of 2 years, you cannot really do anything about it anymore. Stunting is really what we call growth failure, where children are too short for their age. And what we also know is that with stunting, it is also connected or associated with poor cognitive development. So it does have huge implications for children in later life. Recent research has now also shown that stunting is also associated with more non-communicable diseases later on in life, things like heart disease, diabetes, hypertension, obesity. Wasting is really what we are talking there. We can see that there are also about 3% of the children, not as big a problem. And then underweight, about 6%. And that is really where the children are really very, very thin. Wasting is when their height and their growth is also affected. But at the same time, if we look at stunting, 16% of the children, 13% of the children under 5 years old are already classified as overweight. So overweight is also a problem, not only stunting, but also overweight. And I will talk about overweight and later on. So talking about also children 2 to 5 years old, 10.7% of them still suffer from anemia, of which 2.1% is iron deficiency anemia. And we still have a huge problem with vitamin A deficiency in this children. And vitamin A deficiency is one of the biggest causes of blindness amongst children in the world. So when we talk about the adults, if we look at adolescents, 11% of them are also obese already. Men, about 20% overweight and 11% obese. But then when we look at women, 20% of the women are overweight and 41% are obese. So more than 50% of the women in South Africa and about a third of the men do have a risk of developing cardiovascular disease that is already contributing 19% of all deaths in the country. Hypertension, there is a prevalence rate of a very high prevalence rate of hypertension. 24% of all the deaths in the country is also because of hypertension. And then 7% of all the deaths are contributed to diabetes. And that all these cardiovascular disease, hypertension, and diabetes are consequences or associated with overweight and obesity. But then on the other side, these women also have vitamin A deficiency. We still have that, 17.5% that are anemic, and iron deficiency in women still 15.3%. So if we look at the situation in South Africa, we have a very unique situation where we have a double burden of disease or double burden of malnutrition, where we sometimes have overweight, overnutrition and undernutrition in the same household, in the same community. But what I've also seen in some of my in my studies, that even in the same persons, sometimes that there is a person that could be overweight and maybe have diabetes and risk of cardiovascular disease, but at the same time also experiencing maybe an iron deficiency. And then to top it off, we have HIV and AIDS. The official rate is 19% in the country, but we know that it is much higher. And we really have this triple burden of malnutrition in the country. Now, why are we concerned about malnutrition? Because it does slow the economic growth, which again results in poverty, either through direct losses in productivity from poor physical status, like I mentioned earlier. It could also be indirect losses from poor cognitive function, lack of school education. And this also can be through losses through increased healthcare costs. So if we look at the healthcare costs, the World Bank has said that malnutrition, the economic losses that are attributed to malnutrition can range from 6 to 12% of the gross national product. If we take 6%, which is the lowest, this is costing the country at the moment about 300,000 million rand per year. In dollars, 18.75 million. And this is something where we can prevent, we can do something about malnutrition, because it is really a costly drain on the national economy and specifically on the health budget of the country. And that is, I think, where food processors can come in and really help so that the food that we put on the shelves can be very healthy and also affordable for the people. So just talking a little bit about food consumption patterns, and I'm not going to look at everything, but interestingly, the latest South African Demographic and Health Survey has shown that children, when they get weaned in South Africa after there is 6 months exclusive breastfeeding, you can see that these children are eating sugary snacks and they're also eating salty snacks. Salty snacks, almost 50% of babies already are eating salty snacks. If we look at in general, adolescents, young adults, midlife and older adults, you can see that where they are only about 40 or 50% of the people consume fruit on a regular basis, vegetables on a regular basis. But if we look at the salty snacks, almost again, about a third of the people consume salty snacks weekly. And there are also quite a large percentage, if we look at adolescents, 28% consuming it daily. And young adults also about 16%. And then processed meats are also consumed. And the reason why I am talking about processed meats is that there are a lot of processed meat products on the market, very high in salt, very high in sugar, in fat, but very affordable. So that is what people, when they are in a poverty situation, what they are buying. So we also are a country in nutritional transition. So we do have urbanization, lots of people moving to the cities. And this brings with it also nutritional changes. People are consuming more convenience foods that are, again, high in salt, which is, again, associated with hypertension. Specifically high fat intakes that could be associated with heart disease, and sugar, high added sugar intakes. And people consume less vegetables and fruit and less whole grain foods. So in 1998, we've seen that snack food consumption is quite high in the country. And the market for processed packaged food increased from 1998 to 2012 from 55 million rand to 61 million. So this is a huge market in the country. Plain sweetened beverages, plain sweetened biscuits consumption went up by 60%. Soft drinks, 22 liters up to 93 liters per capita per person. So this is almost about a half a liter per person per day. And these sugar-sweetened beverages like Coca-Cola and those sort of drinks contribute about a third of the sugar consumption that people have in the country. 55% of the salt consumption comes from processed foods, bread, processed meat products, seasonings, hard margarine, breakfast cereal, savory snacks. Now, I don't know about people in Africa, but in South Africa, these cheese curls are really very popular. People eat it a lot. And when I work in communities and I ask people, why are you eating this? The reasons they say to me is that it's very cheap, number one. They do not have to eat too much. They eat a lot of these cheese curls because it is salty, it is savory. It gives them the effect that they've eaten almost like a meal. And when they drink a lot of water with it, it gives them also, it swells up in the stomach and they feel full, so that they do not want to eat too often again. But we do know that these snacks are really just salt and nothing else, and some also coloring agents that are also not good for children, especially those that have attention deficit. So this is not a good practice, but it is a very common practice in the country. So when we're talking about what is happening with packaging, do the consumers trust the information that suppliers put and the food processors put on their packaging? But we also see that about only 85% of the nutrient content claims that the processors had on their products were compliant with the South African legislation. The 6% or 7% that were non-compliant were for low energy and calories, and especially these chips that are marketed as low energy, the baked products maybe that they market to say that these are lower in calories. And also that 70% of the ready-to-eat foods that were marketed on the market had higher energy contents than indicated on the package. So not very compliant with what is happening, and people are reading the food labels and they are thinking that they are not consuming so much energy, but if they eat these foods, obviously they're consuming more than they're really aware of. So as nutritionists, what do we recommend to address malnutrition in a country on a national scale? Now, the first thing is we promote to eat a variety of foods, healthy foods, fruit, vegetables, whole grains, dairy products, drink 8 glasses of water a day, legumes, healthy oils with polyunsaturated, monounsaturated fatty acids. We also promote physical activity as and for people that are malnourished. We can also use supplementation by giving people vitamin tablets, mineral, but compliance is very bad, and sometimes there are also side effects to this. Fortification, we have 2 fortified products in the country, which is bread and maize meal, and then food diversification, and this is where we really start coming in. Agricultural food diversification, so that more variety is also being grown. Nutrition education to inform people, and here I want to refer to the food guide in South Africa and the food-based dietary guidelines, and then sustainable food product development. And this is where the agro processors are really playing a huge role to make sure that the food products that we put on the shelves are going to address the issue, and that so that we can do not exacerbate this malnutrition problem in the country. Products that we put on the market, we need to determine who they are for. A lot of emphasis is on children and adults, but I also want to promote that we should not only women and children. We should not only promote women and children nutrition, but really everybody in the life cycle should get attention. Now, there are many models for food product development, and I'm not going to go through them. What I want to do is to go through a model that I am using in my food product development, that my soy-based snacks that I am using. And there are 10 steps that I am doing. So the first thing is really the needs assessment. And when we do the needs assessment and the market research, I really go and see what is on the market, what are the price, what is the nutritional value of the products on the market, and how can I come in with something that is unique or innovative that they do not already have on the market. But at the same time, I'm also looking at the nutritional needs in the country. I'm looking at the obesity, I'm looking at the undernutrition, and I want to make sure that the products that I'm going to put on the market is not going to exacerbate what we already have in the country, or can maybe address some of the problems. So the next thing is really then I look at my formulation criteria. I always state an objective. What do I want this product to have? What is the target population? Am I planning it for elderly people, for the whole community, for maybe just children? Who would be the people that I want to do this? What is the type of product that I want to do? Do I want to develop a snack? And then I very specifically look at nutrient content. Cost is a very, very important thing, because the cost is important, especially where more than 50% of the people in the country live in poverty. I also look at shelf life, because people that live in poverty in rural areas often do not have fridges. They need products that can have a long shelf life. And then I also look at what the standards are for the type of product that I want to develop, the SABS or Codex Alimentarius standards of what that product should conform to. The next thing is that I then go and identify my food ingredients that I'm going to use in my product formulation. And here I try and choose nutritious ingredients, low fat, low salt, less added sugar, lower calories, and more nutrient-dense ingredients like soybean. For instance, soybean is, I didn't show the soybean nutritional content here because I think everybody after these 10 days now know what soybeans have, but very important to include those sort of products, legumes also, in there. I then do a theoretical nutrient analysis, and there are programs available that are based on the food composition tables in South Africa, like Dietary Manager, Food Finder. And then I do a costing so that I can make sure that my product will be affordable for the people. I then prepare it and do sensory analysis with an expert panel, whereafter I will adjust and finalize my product. And then I go and do experimental analysis. Now, the experimental analysis are very expensive, I know that, but it helps to really with the labeling, so that what we put in the product and what we put on the label will be the correct information. And there are different types of analysis. I'm not going to go through all of that. And once I have done that, I look and see how does my theoretical composition, nutrient composition, compare to the chemical analysis of the product. And then I go and optimize, because sometimes I have found that in theory I have maybe found 5 milligrams of iron, but when we analyze it, there's only 2 milligrams of iron. Or it may be in theory it will have maybe about 200 calories, but when I analyze it, it comes out at 300 calories. So I then go and repeat these whole steps C, D, and E again, so that I can adjust for those differences, and then go back and have it analyzed again to make sure that what I put on the label is also going to be on my product. The next thing then is to do sensory evaluation of the optimized product. But in this case, we use the people that will be consuming the product. I don't go to an expert panel. I now go to a community. If my product was developed with mainly seniors as my target population, I go to seniors and to elderly people and let them taste the product. If it was for school children, I go to school children and let them taste it and make sure that it is acceptable for them. And there are different types of evaluation forms, but I use a simple hedonic scale just something like that, where people can say they like it, or they like it, they don't like it, or they dislike it, neither like it nor dislike, so that I can see what we need to do with the taste afterwards. Once the product has about an 80% approval, sensory approval from the consumer panel, I then go and do shelf life testing, microbiological testing, usually using a SANA accredited laboratory. And I use, again, the standards that are applicable to the type of product to make sure that my shelf life is going to be at least more or the same as what is prescribed. And then I go and do a field application. Now, when I go into the field, I go into with consumers into a community where I will do an intervention, give people nutrition education, and then also tell them what the benefits of this product will be. Maybe if it's a snack food, I would compare this to those cheese curls and tell them what the benefits is going to be, and then also telling them about general nutrition, and then let them consume it for some time, and then also see what is happening with their nutritional status, so that they can then become the ambassadors for this product. Because if they start feeling better and they can see that their health is improving, who better to go and advertise to other people by word of mouth about my product. Also, I do consumption studies. Like, for instance, I'm doing a study next year when I go to South Africa. I was supposed to be doing it this year, where I will, maybe in tuck shops, I will do nutrition education with products that I will put in a school tuck shop. I will put my product there as well. And after the nutrition education and tasting sessions that the children did and the sensory analysis, then I will put my product in there and then compare and see how much do they buy the product off the shelf compared to the other snack foods that are there. So I also want to see what is happening there. And that is when, only after that, do I roll it out and maybe sell it to a bigger industry that will go and market this and put it on the shelf. But the one thing that I really try and do in most instances, and I enjoyed what Wilmer said, that he is really looking at the locally produce and local producers, is I try and identify small, micro, medium enterprises in specific low-income communities, so that I give my product to those people. I train them how to do it, how to prepare it, how to produce it, and for them to go and market it. It's not that I want to cut out the bigger retail companies completely, but we need to keep it as affordable as possible. I did a project in South Africa in a very poor community where I taught the people how to grow soy. I then developed some recipes for them that was very easy. They did not need electricity to prepare these snack foods. And we are now in the process of identifying the small, medium, and micro enterprises where we can now get them to start producing it on a larger scale and making it available to the schools, school nutrition programs, and to the local community. That just cuts out all these middlemen that take money, and so that by the end of the day, the products that are on the market becomes too expensive. So there are a lot of innovation, a lot of healthy products already on the market in South Africa, but the availability in the lower income areas it's very poor. As soon as a product has the heart mark or the diabetes mark on it, there is a higher price on these products and people cannot afford it. Access, affordability, extremely important for the people in the lower income. So what I have identified in South Africa is that there is a need for healthy, affordable weaning foods. And I'm really asking you today to think about these products. Soy milk and yogurt. Soy milk at the moment, 2 liters of milk costs anything between 22 and 25 rand, 2 liters of cow milk. If I want to buy a liter of soy milk, it costs me the same price for 1 liter. So why will people go and buy soy milk if they are going to pay double the price? So I really want to, I have got a soy cow installed in a local community in South Africa, where I've trained the community to produce their own soy, to grow their own soy, and also to now have the soy cow. They have like a little mini business there where they are now producing their own soy milk directly to the community members. And it costs, at this stage, it costs about 3 Rand, and these people are still making money. So why 20 Rand on the shelf if you can actually produce it for 3 Rand and still have a profit in that as well? Soy yogurt, absolutely important. Snacks. You have seen that all the snacks on the market, very expensive, those that are low in salt, low in sugar. Butters, it's not something that we have a lot in South Africa, nut butters, those sort of things. Salad dressings, mayonnaises, people are using it. We are not going to get them not to use it, but can we give them maybe healthier products? Fruity snacks, for instance, the fruity snacks that are on the market at the moment, very high in sugar, all preserved with sugar. So I think we need to really work at that. I just went and looked in the US to see what is happening on the market here. You can see here that there are some soy nut butters, there are some peanut butter that is also, there's a soy nut butter and combined with peanut butter. It just lifts the nutritional value of and the fat content to just healthier fats for people there. There are also quite a lot of soy milk and soy cheeses and tofu, healthy butters, yogurt with different types of ingredients, even ice creams with soy, which I think there is a huge need, and it can be done in South Africa. Healthy snack foods. Absolutely. We need to get people away from these really high energy, nutritious, lacking puffs that they are eating. And we need to supply them with something that is just as affordable, but more nutritious for them to eat. There are quite a lot of breakfast foods also on the market here in America, something that has not really, we have a lot of breakfast cereals in South Africa, not so much these little bars. So there is a huge opportunity also to use soy and legumes maybe in these bars. Smoothies. I know that people make smoothies at home. People in poorer households do not have the facilities, they do not have the equipment to do this, but also something that we can put on the market in South Africa. Some even vegetable fruit snacks that are more affordable, more healthier than what the people are having at the moment. So to conclude, malnutrition is a persistent problem in the country, and I think with COVID, we've already seen that poverty has already increased, so has food insecurity in the country, and we've seen that with poverty, food insecurity, even malnutrition will also improve, increase in the country. Food processors have an important role and a responsibility towards the people in the country where they live and work, to make sure that the products that they put on the market are affordable for the large majority of people, not only for those in the top income. It should be nutritious as well for everybody. Not only the nutritious products should not only be for those people that can afford the nutritious foods. It should be safe for human consumption. It should also be culturally acceptable. And that is why we need to look at the ingredients. It should be types of foods that people are familiar with. And then there should also be ethical conduct. Make sure that the product that you put on the market and the label really tells the truth of what is what is in that product, so that the consumers do not get misinformation, that they get the truth, and that they will support and buy the products that you put on the market. So from that, thank you very much.
Wilna, thank you so much for this wonderful presentation. I couldn't help but to compare the United States to South Africans' eating consumption patterns, because I think we see the same in low-income communities within the United States, as well as we do see abroad as well. My question to you is, because I know with some of these packaging, you know, when you do have the stamp of approval by the Diabetes Association or the Heart Association, some people have a tendency, regardless of the cost, shy away from that because it's like, oh, that's for someone who's sick, or that. Do you notice the same patterns in South Africa as well, where people just shy away from those products because they associate it with sickness instead of this may help me in the long run?
I have not really picked that up at all. It is as if in South Africa, the moment a product has one of those stamps, it is almost like a given that this is healthier than anything else that is similar, so maybe I should be buying that. But the unfortunate thing is all those products are much more expensive. So I think that is why I think food processors should work with dietitians, nutritionists, maybe more community nutritionists, so that when they start marketing their product, that the nutritionists can also come in and tell people what the benefits are of these products, that there are similar products that do not have the heart mark, but that are just as good and maybe sometimes maybe could be healthier and more affordable. Because the heart mark and the diabetes mark and all of those and the Weight Watchers mark, they have specific criteria. They will, the heart mark will look at fat content, not necessarily at sugar content. So sometimes you will get a low fat yogurt very high in sugar. So you are defeating, you are eating low-fat yogurt, but now you're increasing your sugar intake, and I think that is some of the issues that we are having with some of the products on the market.
No, I appreciate that, and I know I'm sure when you're working with students as well, you know, the nutritional label itself, they may say like, oh, this is very good for someone who has diabetes, but in reality, the sodium content and the, you know, saturated fat content are just not appropriate at all. So I do get your point with that, because that is absolutely true. So before we kind of run out of time and everything, I do want to get to the panel discussion, because there's been a lot of questions from the audience, and so certainly I want to get to that. Thank you again to all our presenters for such a wonderful presentation this morning. I hope you all, the audience, has gotten a lot of good insights to the usefulness of soy and how we can expand our approaches in certain communities within Africa. So without further ado, I'm going to start the panel questions. A lot of good questions from the audience. So I'm just going to kind of go down the line as the presenters were presenting this morning. So Ruth, you are up actually. First question I have for you is, local soy production being used locally, or are farmers linked to markets?
Oh, thank you. Thank you for that. You know, there's increase in local production now. Ordinarily, they would import. And if we take Kenya, for example, which is a big market in East Africa, they would import, you know, to produce oil, you know, the big manufacturers here from Uganda, from Tanzania, where it is actually grown. But now I've seen increased production of soy by the farmers themselves to use it locally in animal feeds, and also to sell, to link to, for example, World Food Program is a market, it's already market to put in children's foods. So I think even those of us who are now working on increased production, we are making sure that, yes, improve your own dietary diversity in the household, but at the same time, we have to have a market for excess, and also we have to have a market for those who want to grow it for sale. I think the agricultural sector right now, we are showing Jeanette that really that's where the jobs are, but also that's what will grow our economies. Yeah.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Absolutely. Thank you for that. Moving into Wilmer, question here is, what are the current threats to tan feeds and similar businesses in Tanzania?
Well, I mean, the threat is primarily market forces. Consolidation is happening within the poultry industry especially, but also within the dairy and beef production. And so larger, well-financed laying houses and broiler feed systems are being built, and that's dropping the price of the broiler meat and the price of eggs below what our smallholder can produce it. So that's a real threat, where the distribution channel for the finished meat product is maturing rapidly and reaching out into the smaller villages. So that's, you know, why we have to constantly keep working on sharpening our costs so that our customers, the poultry keepers, will have a lower production cost so they can compete with the large houses.
Thank you.
There are some other intermittent threats. Occasionally there will be some government intervention in the price of commodities, or not allowing exports of commodities because they fear there will be a shortage, and that drives up the price of commodities unreasonably, really above what the market would support. But I think those are kind of the two main threats, and we work on mitigating that. Our reference to establishing a tan grains is essentially to aggregate grain, pay the smallholder a fair price at the time of harvest, who does not have good storage facilities. We bring it into our facilities and can keep the grain in good condition, but that takes a lot of capital. And so we're out seeking capital for that expansion.
Okay. Thank you for that answer. Wilna, for you, as pointed out with the nutrition transition, as you know, not only South Africa, but knowing in other countries as well, do you think taxing soda is a good counter strategy, which is always a hot debate, I know, especially in the States? So thoughts on that?
We do have a sugar tax in South Africa. What I just don't understand is every time the sugar tax is implemented, even the diet sodas, the price is the same. It also goes up. So I don't always understand what the reasoning behind this is, because if you want to get people to consume products that do not have sugar in it, and there is a sugar tax, why are the products that are similar but do not contain sugar still cost the same? That should be cheaper then, because a lot of the purchases in South Africa is price driven. Because of the poverty, people will consume, they will drink these products, or these, like you saw that there is a huge consumption of sugar sweetened beverages in the country. And yeah, so I'm not, I think sugar tax, yes, it can work if that cost adjustment is really going to be fair. At the moment, I don't think it is fair, because they just the products stay the same. And what I don't understand is they have a sugar tax on products, but the low sugar or the sugar-free products, and I'm not only talking about now sugar-sweetened beverages, for instance, but there are also some, they call it light snacks, which has lower salt, lower fat, those are more expensive than the ones with the sugar and the saturated fats and the salt. So they're defeating the purpose in the country by saying there's a sugar tax. The only thing the sugar tax is doing, it is generating money for the government.
Yeah, and I mean, I know that we saw that here in New York and everything when they put in their initiation for sugar tax and all that, people were still consuming some of these other beverages, then juice consumption started to go up and you're thinking, no, wait, where did that go? So definitely it is a hard decision as far as, we can have our own personal opinions, but that sometimes doesn't change everything.
And talking about juice that you mentioned, pure 100% juice is very expensive, where the diluted juices, where they add a lot of sugar to it, those are the cheaper ones. So it looks as if the marketing strategy is almost to get the people to buy more of the products with the sugar so that we can get more tax. Although the motivation behind it is nutrition, we need to look at the nutrition of the people. So it's difficult for me to really answer your exact question in the South African context, because it looks as if there is a little bit of a paradox there.
Okay, thank you for that. I appreciate it. So back to Ruth. How are youth being trained to process soy? I know that you had mentioned that, so that was one of the audience questions.
During the time we were promoting soy production, and then we saw the uptake and then some excess grains, we actually got some support to get machinery that would process soy into flour, and then you also have some the leftover to put into animal feeds. So we actually used that to train the youth, but at the same time, now as we move forward, we had to gauge the interest. There is interest now, especially there are now groups of young men coming together. They are keen to grow soya, but we're also telling them you can actually now process. So there is a cost to the machinery. They are not cheap, but at the same time, we can see how we can link them to some loans. And right now there's a lot of support in Kenya for youth enterprises. So that's something that we would actually look at very seriously. Yeah, but at the same time in schools, we do the same. We go through clubs, we have in the US is 4-H clubs. In Kenya, we call them 4K clubs. So we grow the soya in the schools as well and go through production right to consumption. And so once we have the interest and we show the opportunities, we believe that other opportunities will come up for technical support and for funding as well.
Well, and hopefully too, then the kids are so excited about growing this in the schools that they pass it along to their parents, and so that hopefully that generates some enthusiasm as well in the entire household to kind of support this initiative. So thank you.
Yeah. Actually, Jeanette, we found that when we link what the children do at school to the parents, it actually works very well because the parents understand, they get the knowledge, but at the same time, they support the children as well. But the nutrition goals is part and parcel of it. So when you process, we know you process, you lose some nutrients, but at the same time, you then have to have a diversified diet to get the nutrients that you have lost. So right now, I'm concentrated in the rural areas myself, and I really sympathize with what Wilna is talking about because it's a real problem for urban centers, urban areas.
Okay. Thank you for that. So the next question goes to Wilmer. Moving forward, do you see opportunities in adding extruded human foods?
Well, yes, the extruder that we are using actually extrudes at such a high pressure that it essentially double refines the oil that comes out of it. And so it is hypogenically clean, and we bottle it right out of the extruder and can sell it for cooking oil and human consumption. The same thing with the soy meal when it comes out. We have had a proposal with the United Nations Food Relief Program to use some of our products. We would be in conjunction with another Tanzanian producer of food products. But yeah, it definitely, we have the capacity to provide a product that can be used for human consumption, even though our primary business is animal feed.
Well, that would be a good expansion into your company as well. So I hope that endeavor goes through and we are able to see that out in Tanzania. So that'll be fantastic. Thank you.
We certainly do value the potential for direct human consumption by it. We met with a woman who is an entrepreneur in the Arusha area who's producing supplement powders to put in the food that are based in soy. And she's got a very successful business, a good distribution system. We provided her some of our meal. Unfortunately, the logistics are too difficult in that we are in the center of Tanzania and she's about 5 hours away by truck. And we just couldn't figure out a way to get the product to her at a cost that that her products could absorb. So maybe the alternative is for her to set up a facility in our neighborhood and be marketing the product there.
Well, hopefully that happens, right? I know that there is always that logistical issue in certain African countries. So hopefully that will work as well. A question for Wilna here is, are you working with processors to make packaged snacks or fortifying soy flour, TSP? Any insights on that?
Yes, I do. I used to have a soy workshop every year while I was still in South Africa for soy processors, where we could get together for 2 or 3 days and we could share ideas and see what could be done so that we do not take business away from each other, so that we could focus on, what is needed in the community, in the country, and who is going to take on what. I also have an extruder that I'm using that I've got NRF funding, which is the National Research Foundation that funded me with an extruder, that we are doing product development at the moment. And the only problem for me, I love extruded products. I think that is absolutely fantastic because it's the nutritious value is really maintained. We do not lose as much nutrients in the extrusion. It is shelf life is fantastic, especially for the poorer communities. My only problem with that is that extruders are very expensive, and that it's at the end of the day, smaller processors cannot always afford extruders. And I have not yet seen, like here in America, I get the idea that I see on the Shark Tank, a program that I look at, and I can't remember what they call it now, is that I can take my recipe to a processor and he will process on my behalf. I have not seen that in South Africa happening. That I think the market there is too small still. There are not that many big processors. That one processor will take recipes from different people and process for them. But yes, I do work with processors in South Africa. I use their expertise quite a lot when I do my product development, because I'm a nutritionist. I'm not a food scientist. I'm not a grower. I work with the agriculture agricultural people, especially when I implemented my program in the community. I worked with the Department of Agriculture extension workers to help us to get the soy farms going and all of that. And even with the soy milk, something that I just want to mention, and I think it's important to mention this also to soy processors, is that there is always this issue about why should we put soy milk and why would people drink it because of the beanie taste and the beanie taste and the beanie taste. Now, something that happened in the community where I worked was, and I'm not answering your question maybe, but I just want to mention this, was I went into the community and I was letting them taste soy milk. I called it soy milk. And I got a 42% acceptability rate. I went into another community and I called it a soy drink. I got an 85% acceptability because the perception in the first community was milk, it should taste like milk. Therefore, they didn't like it. But the moment I did not call it milk, but I called it soy drink, everybody was happy to drink it. They thought it was great. The acceptability was wonderful because they did not compare it to milk. So I think it's all in how we market. It's all in how we educate the people. That is the important thing. And that is something that I also get from processors in South Africa is that, oh, the beanie taste. How can we get rid of the beanie taste? People that I work with in communities do not know about the beanie taste. They have not tasted soy ever before. They do not know what it should taste like. So I go in with an awareness program first about the health benefits before I even let them start tasting and doing things like that. So it's all about how we market and how we do. But yes, I do work with soy processors. I love extruded products. I think it is absolutely wonderful. But I also work to develop products where we do not need those big fancy equipment so that the local producers in the local areas where they grow, like in the area where I work in at the moment is Kwakwa. We have 40 soy farmers in the area. It is a rural area, but they also have small little producers, always what we call almost backyard producers. I want to develop those people to support, to keep the product in the area, because if you start with the big national companies, transport the soy from Kwakwa to the Cape, to get it processed there, transport it back to Kwakwa, to sell it through a retailer, all of it adds costs. And we need to start looking at how to cut costs for these poorer communities, and the large majority in South Africa, especially now with COVID also. How can we solve that problem? But yeah, I love working with producers. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you for that comprehensive answer.
And
for that. Yeah. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. So this question is actually for both Ruth and Wilmer. What limits the link between farmers and agro-processors in their countries?
Well, the biggest link is the logistics in getting the smallholders' beans from the farm gate to the processor's plant. It's cumbersome and costly to have, small quantity pickups, picking up the product. And so a lot of that marketing is met by middlemen who have their own equipment and can go out and gather it up and then offer it in larger quantities to processors elsewhere. That's the biggest. It's just the logistics. Poor roads, expensive travel costs and travel times and so on. Our greatest source of soy is from the Songea area in southwestern Tanzania, and we are more up in the central part. So it's like a 6-hour or 7-hour drive for a truck to pick it up from the growers there. But Fortunately, that's a highland area where there's plentiful rainfall during the growing season, so they really can produce a good crop. But they're just the infrastructure within Tanzania is not well enough developed to easily access for those people to easily access the value chain.
Okay, all right. And then Ruth, on your endpoint?
The first time we did this, there was a problem because, again, smallholder farmers, they don't produce a whole lot, and selling individually is not cost effective. But now we decided to group them. So we group them, and then we have mini aggregation centers. And when we do that, it's a lot easier using public transport to bring them to one central place so that a big buyer can then get it from one central place. But then we have to do proper record keeping and so on. All that actually requires resources. And sometimes it's difficult for small organizations such as ours to be able to facilitate that. And then it then means that the grower does not get really much return if you put all this cost into this. But it's possible because with the increasing numbers of farmers, you can actually do aggregation and so that the farmer can actually get better returns in the end. Yeah. So that's the direction we have been going. We have tested it. And even with this harvest now that we are anticipating, which is huge, that's how we have planned the farmers by grouping them. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. And I guess a final question for all of our panelists as we wind down on this panel discussion, which I think was very fruitful and very helping in this. This is a hard question to respond to. So each of you, certainly your opinion counts because you're each working in a different location within Africa. Where do you see the future of soybeans headed as far as within the community that you're working with the farmers, processors, etc. So if you could just spend a couple minutes just to talk about where you see the future of soy heading, I would appreciate that.
I can start. I see a great future for soy. Wilmer, sorry, I caught you. I see a great future for me, especially in the Western Kenya, but also other parts of Kenya who are now looking to Western Kenya to grow this, and others calling in from different parts of Kenya saying now we are growing, so that we don't always have to just rely on imports, even if it's just coming from next door. Actually, the Kenya, Uganda markets, the East African market is like one big market, and there's a lot of need for soya when you look at what it can do, both for animals, for humans, for income generation, and also for the soils, so that our tired soils can be healthy and produce other crops as well. So I'm very excited, and I'm looking to this collaboration. I'm just hoping that this is an area where, thank God, we can collaborate with our international friends, the US and Asia as well, and then just have this particular sector grow, because it really has a lot of benefits. Yeah, I'm very excited about it.
Thank you, Ruth, for that. Wilmer?
I would say that I would concur with Ruth. There is a great future ahead. We have seen it just in the 5 years that I've been involved in Tanzania. Much more soya is produced now than when we came there 5 years ago. In addition, the East African Trade Group, East African Trade Council, group of East African countries that have lowered tariffs for trade within them, are producing a healthy market in that growers in an area of surplus can now market into another country that has a deficiency. And so all of that indicates that the soy industry is gradually maturing. The food supplement industry is a nascent industry, but it will continue to grow. We've had critics say, why are you investing all this money and energy and bringing in a crop that is not native to the area when you could use pigeon peas, which are a legume and is native. Well, the problem is pigeon peas do not nearly have the nutritional value that soya does. So I think it is a good effort, and it will continue to expand.
Great. Thank you, Wilmer. Wilna?
Hey, I concur. There is a great future. If I think about South Africa, I think only about 3% of the soy that is currently produced is used for human food. The rest is for animal food. I think with COVID, especially the challenges that we are facing with the country was already a large percentage of people living in poverty, food insecurity. I think we are going to have to resort to nutritious, but more affordable food products for people, and especially for the future. And soy is absolutely, it's nutritious, it's flexible, you can do so much with it. It is, the affordability there is great. I just think that people need to be made aware. We need to educate people, because at the end of the day, the market is demand and supply. If there's no demand, there's not going to be supply. So I think from a nutritionist point of view, I think that it is our roles as nutritionists to promote soy when we do talk about our food-based dietary guidelines, when we educate people about the health benefits of soy. And that is something that I am very, very passionate about. Whenever I go into nutrition education, any community, I always talk about soy. I work also with the Oilseeds Advisory Committee in South Africa. They are a great resource for soy producers, soy processors in South Africa. And something that I've just completed was a study that was funded by them, where I determined the food insecurity among soy farmers and what they are doing with soy and how they are using it in their households. And I think our article got published in Dr. Ruth's journal, the AJFAND, about this. 40% of the soy farmers themselves are food insecure, but they're not using soy in their homes because they do not know what the health benefits of soy are for themselves. So education, if we are going to get the producers to understand the importance of the product that they are growing or the crop that they are growing, the processors can then take it and have these wonderful new products on the market. And we as nutritionists need to really get the awareness and the education out there for the people to start using it. But I think there's huge opportunity for soy. I always say I started working with soy about 6-8 years ago, and it is such a challenging work. But if I can win one community to start using soy, we will win the next and the next and the next. Maybe not to think too big, but to start small.
Absolutely good point that you made with that. We do have to start small. I think as all of you present it, start out small and it will grow. So what a great final thought. I thank you all so much for your wonderful presentations. I know it generated a huge amount of ideas for me, and it has definitely expanded my kind of list of who I need to start reaching out to and contacting. So again, on behalf of the Soybean 360 Symposium, thank you again. I appreciate you so much, and have a great rest of your Friday.